We got to see the Dawntrail job action trailer a couple of days ago and get a taste of how our favourite jobs, least favourite jobs, and a summoner are going to play for the next 3 years of the game's life cycle. I wanted to do something for it, because honestly it's just an exciting time to be an FF14 enjoyer all round, and I want to talk about how excited I am. I can't do an FF14 job action trailer reaction because, well, I'm not entertaining, so let's do the next best thing. Today, we're going to talk about what we know has changed about our favourite jobs, what that means for how it's likely to play, and a little on how much I'm personally excited about it. Without further ado, let's get into it. The job action trailer opened up with Dragoon, one of 2 currently existing entries that were slated to get extensive reworks, and honestly, I was genuinely surprised at how little it changed on the whole. It looks like a good chunk of the core rotation structure of the spear wielder remains somewhat intact. Dragoon still has a 5-hit combo, but it's somewhat changed in that the 5th hit has been upgraded to a new weapon skill with 0 positional requirements accompanying it. Spine Shatter Dive has been completely removed, as confirmed by Yoshi P during the live letter, and in its place is a gap closer which deals no damage, reminiscent of Monk's Thunderclap. I honestly expect this to have stacks in much the same way as well. Feint will have its duration buffed from 10 to 15 seconds, and Second Wind will be buffed for melee across the board. There were 2 new attacks shown, and the primary assumption is that these are combo actions off of Stardiver and Dragonfire Dive, and that both are off global cooldowns. But it's certainly possible that at least one of these is just a whole new button to press. Life of the Dragon now has a 20-second duration, reduced down from the previous 30-second window, and instead of entering it via 2 Mirage Dives, you enter it by just using Gear Skogul in general. This means that there is a solid chance that the cooldown of Gear Skogul will increase to something around the 60-second mark, but that you can now do your Life of the Dragon in your opener, which isn't possible at the moment. Of note, Dragon Sight was not shown in the trailer, but that does not necessarily mean that it is removed. Honestly, I put the odds at 50-50, I wouldn't be surprised if it did go, but we'll have to wait and see. Honestly, I'm in 2 minds of the Dragoon changes. I love Dragoon and it didn't change too extensively, and to me that's a good thing, but they made a concerted effort to remove points of friction from the job, such as one of their positionals per combo, and the amount of weaves they need to undertake during their burst windows. I'm very open to giving this iteration of Dragoon a fair shake, because I think it could still be really fun. Paladin didn't change much at all, so those that are happy Paladin mains right now should be pretty content. There is a new combo action as a bonus on the end of the Confitia combo following Blade of Valor. Sentinel gets an upgrade, Reprisal has its duration extended from 10 to 15 seconds for all tanks, and they also all get Rampart upgrades. Atonement also got upgrades for its 2nd and 3rd hits, making it a fully fledged combo instead of a repeated skill that you press 3 times. Goring Blade cannot be executed without Fight or Flight being active, just making it impossible to mess up the timings, and Requiescat got an upgrade that seemingly makes it AoE, though that's definitely a little bit of speculation. Basically, we just got the job updates early in 6.3 instead of 7.0, so you've actually already been playing Dawntrail Paladin for a year. For Warrior, as well as getting those tank-wide adjustments and a buff for Vengeance, we will also be receiving a combo action after Primal Rend, and another additional action that can be used after executing your 3 heavy hits in Inner Release. So you do your 3 Fell Cleaves or Decimates, and then you get this bonus attack. It seems like they're both off globals as well, based on the colour of the glow upon you executing it. This skill that they use after the gap closer here looks to be a straight upgrade for Inner Chaos, rather than any meaningful new skill. What this means is that Warrior burst phases are going to be absolutely insane. The way things stand right now, the number of Fell Cleaves and Inner Chaoses you can output is just crazy, and now you can add 2 extra powerful off-globals as combo actions. Just like Paladin, if you enjoy Warrior right now, you'll enjoy it next expansion too, because on a macro level, nothing changed. I quite like Warrior despite it being fairly simple, so I'm very much alright with it just getting some extra weaves and not too much else. Astra's changes are actually very interesting on the whole. and the gameplay of the job has seemingly changed quite a lot. Swiftcast had its cooldown reduced to 40 seconds for all casters and healers, and casts have completely changed. Now instead of individually drawing cards, you will draw them in sets of 4, much like the sleeve draw of times gone past, with each set containing an offensive, mitigative, and curative card alongside your Lord and Lady. You can play them at your leisure across those 60 seconds. We do not know for certain what the cards do individually, and we'll have to wait for tooltips to know. In fact, we don't even know if both of the sets are the same or if there are differences in the effect between them. What we can tell is that the cards all seem to be 15-second buffs, and from there, everything else is speculation. This removal of RNG is something I'm in favour of, but I can see how Astro mains might take this to heart because it really does change up how the job plays at its core. It was also confirmed that Ast will be getting a 3rd stack of Essential Dignity, Astrodyne as well as the accompanying Astro Signs are being completely removed, thank God, and we can also see a couple of new abilities or spells that we don't quite know the effects of yet. This new thing with the symbols of the 12 on it that affects an enemy and we have no real concrete idea what it does, this galaxy effect at the end which looks absolutely gorgeous, and this, which honestly I just assumed on my first 2 watches was just horoscope, but you can see here that it has a slightly different animation, so maybe it is an upgrade to horoscope Helios or something like that. I think so much of how this job is actually going to play is up in the air right now and nobody knows, but I'm really enthused about the future of Astro and I hope we can see good things in the coming weeks. It's genuinely as much of a question mark as the new jobs are, which is interesting considering how little Dragoon changed in comparison. All of the physical range jobs are receiving a trait that will buff the damage reduction of their 90-second unique defensive cooldown, such as in Dancer's case here, Shield Samba. Importantly, Standard Step is receiving alternative skill that allows you to apply or refresh the standard finish buff without actually doing the standard step dance steps themselves. We have no idea exactly how this works or what it does. Some people are claiming that it procs off on Avant, and honestly I think that's kind of cope. My actual guess is that it fills a similar function as Horizon on Ninja, but as a note it doesn't do damage, allowing you to fix failure states or more efficiently swap partners in combat, or maybe if you're allowed to, it will enable you to set up your buffs pre-pull without needing the 16-second timer. The fact that it doesn't do any damage at all is actually quite interesting to me. They also get an additional action which combos off of Technical Finish and costs 50 Esprit to use, as well as another GCD attack which the Dancer uses after Flourish, and we can assume is a cooldown that becomes available whilst under the effects of that Flourish. On the whole, Dancer did not change much at all, instead receiving a little more in terms of their options during burst scenarios and quality of life to the application or maintaining of Standard Step during specific scenarios. I'll take it. Though as somebody who doesn't love Dancer's current playstyle, I'm going to go ahead and assert over every happy Dancer main that I hope we see much more significant changes next expansion, because this alone kind of feels a little bit shallow. Reaper's first major change is one that has taken place across the board in the form of Plentiful Harvest. In Dawntrail, most attacks which previously gave you 50 gauge will no longer give you any at all, instead providing you the effect that that gauge was usually used for. In this case, it allows you to directly enter Enshroud without any gauge requisite attached to it. This feels more like a change to make it easier for less experienced players, making it harder for them to overcap gauge and easier for them to stockpile an appropriate burst for 2 minutes without micromanaging. Honestly, I'm in favour of this. Good change. Gibbet and Gallows get some kind of upgrade. This could be linked to Gluttony, or it could just be a standard upgrade, we'll have to wait and see. There's a new skill used under Enshroud, which is most likely just a new button we can press while within that state once. Harvest Moon now gives 10 gauge, and we get this new skill which was showcased in between Hell's Ingress and Egress, and can be memed upon to be Enhanced Harp, though I don't think it is that. I think this skill is way too flashy to be Enhanced Harp, which is something you're never going to use at all in a lot of the game's encounters, so it's actually likely a cooldown of some variety that you just get and use, and they wanted to showcase it in that way. I feel a little weird about the Reaper changes on the whole. Reaper has a very solid core foundation as a job, but that core foundation felt hinged upon growing in future expansions, which it hasn't really done here. There are definitely enough interesting changes for me to reserve my judgment until we see the tooltips though, and I'm very happy with the quality of life changes the job received. Actually, wait, no, why is death design still a thing? I could have sworn it would have gone to the chopping block. Red Mage is a job that I'm a little worried about, to be completely blunt about it. There are good changes, such as manification following the Reaper quality of life adjustment and no longer supplying gauge, but instead a free melee combo, and now the fact that an enchanted Moulinet combo requires 50-50 gauge instead of the previous 60-60, giving it parity with single target and fixing one of my classic annoyances with the job. Jolt and Impact have both gotten upgrades, and there are 2 new OGCDs. This one, which seems to be a result of Embolden, and this one, which I initially confused as a 4th finisher and was very unhappy about, but on further attention, it seems to be an off-global. That's about it. I feel that Red Mage gameplay at this point is pretty stagnant, and we haven't received any kind of significant jolt for way too long now. I'm not sure if I feel positively about another expansion with mostly static Red Mage, rather than one which has been evolving every few years, so unfortunately, I'm gonna have to label this one as dead. I love Machinist, and I'm biased. Barrel Stabilizer is also subject to the quality of life changes I mentioned and no longer gives gauge, but allows you to enter Hypercharge free of charge. Drill now has 2 stacks, and Chainsaw has a combo action which I will kindly refer to as Chainsaw 2 Electric Boogaloo, and this one also gives you an extra 20 gauge. I wonder if it does the same damage as like every other tool or if it does something different. Your Hypercharge window has gotten new animations, with Heat Blast, Ricochet and Gorse Round getting a fresh lick of paint, and finally, we have the American button here, which is likely a combo GCD off of Barrel Stabilizer, though we'll have to see for confirmation on that. I know a lot of people have their fair share of issues with this job, but I just really enjoy it, and I'm happy that we're getting some more cool flashy things. I'm actually okay with another 3 years of Machinist, because it beats being completely reworked from the ground up every expansion, as it has been so many times in the past. Huton is gone for Ninja, with you no longer needing to apply or maintain that buff. Its ninjutsu effect has resultingly been changed to this wind AoE attack, which applies the hidden buff. I'm a fan of this, because I personally don't believe that Huton was an interesting job mechanic whatsoever, and it was just purely annoying at low levels. What we get in its place is this new gauge. Every time you armor crush, you gain 2 stacks on that gauge, with a maximum of 5, and every time you use Aeolian Edge, you spend 1. This is likely some kind of damage buff for Aeolian Edge, but what exactly it does is yet to be seen. I wonder if this means that Horizon is removed, or is it repurposed in some way, maybe to give you a bunch of stacks all at once. It seems that Bava Kakra and Hellfrog Medium both receive upgrades. Tenchi Jin gets this awesome finisher. This right here is likely an upgraded trick attack which now hits on AoE, making it much more useful in dungeon scenarios. And this Poison Spit right here is almost certainly an upgrade to Mug, because it provides the player with 40 gauge, which is exactly what Mug did. I think Ninja and Endwalker was actually one of the best designed and most satisfying jobs to play, despite it not being my personal favourite, and all the changes they've made here seem to be continuing to streamline it in a positive direction. Based on what Yoshida covered in the live letter, Sage will be receiving an AoE Cardia cooldown, and until it's confirmed otherwise, I have decided that it will be called Pancardia. I love the idea of Pancardia, and I can't wait until the tooltips confirm my name correct. Surely. On top of this, Soteria will receive a reduction to its cooldown. My guess is it will become 60 seconds instead of 90, but we'll have to wait and see for sure. There's also new DPS skills, though we don't know the finer details of exactly what they are, and what seems to be an AoE dot. Well, actually, it was confirmed to be an AoE dot. They noted in the live letter that Eucrasia will allow you to enhance Dyscrasia 2 into Eucrasian Dyscrasia, which is not only a tongue tire, but it also provides the AoE dot effect. Eucrasian Prognosis also appears slightly visually different here. It could be a direct upgrade, or it could be the effect of the Zoe usage that the player used immediately beforehand. We'll have to wait and see. Based on these and the other healer changes, by the way, I have a small prediction here. Each healer skill has a buff to their GCD that will massively buff that AoE healing or mitigation GCD in some way. For example, we have Horoscope on Astro, providing a different animation. We have the Eucrasian Prognosis after Zoe here on Sage, and Scholar and White Mage both have new animations on Medica 2 and Succor as well. But to get any kind of confirmation here, we'll have to wait and see. From all the healer changes we saw, I think Sage got the least impactful ones, but I believe that's okay, because Sage is already in an absolutely excellent spot as a healer, and it didn't really need much in the first place. Everything it got is good, and I can't wait to dive a little deeper. Now Black Mage is really interesting. Got a new gauge, which builds a stack every time you use Fire 4, allowing you to execute this nuclear warhead upon filling the gauge with 6 fires. Something I was not expecting was that we also got a way to reposition ley lines once per usage, allowing way more flexibility on it. It also got 3 polyglot stacks, an upgraded version of Thunder, and significant changes to the way that Mana Font works. Mana Font used to be really underwhelming, but now Mana Font seems to give you full MP, it gives you 3 Umbral Hearts, it gives you the ability to use another Paradox, and it maxes out the Astral Fire timer. It's literally a full refresh. Paradox under Astral Fire has also been made an instant cast. They then show off Flare and how it gives you 3 notches on the gauge apiece. What's more interesting than any of these changes are the connotations that this has for Black Mage play. Firstly, this new gauge is clearly a concentrated effort to reduce or remove non-standard rotations, which you can either see as a positive or negative. Secondly, another change they mentioned, which is that now to restore MP you must cast spells in Umbral Ice instead of waiting for the mana tick within Ice Stance. This raises a significant question mark. Do you need to cast Blizzard spells in Umbral Ice, or is it any spells in Umbral Ice? If you need to cast Blizzard spells, then non-standard is definitely in a very awkward spot. Also, does Despair provide those fire stacks if you cut your rotation short? Does a Firestarter proc provide those fire stacks, or is it only F4? We be wanting to enter downtime periods after a Blizzard 4 now to ensure full MP. There's so many question marks surrounding this job that we'll have to wait for the Media Tour video releases to have answered. Honestly, that's really exciting to me. Black Mage is one to watch. For the casual Black Mage enjoyer, this is absolutely a win. But for the die-hard fan, this could go either way, and I'll be sitting on the sidelines eating popcorn either way. White Mage got a few small but very significant changes. Firstly, Tetragrammaton will be getting 2 charges. Actually, off topic, but I have a question. Who called it Tetragrammation? I called it Tetragrammation instead of Tetragrammaton until like Shadowbringers before I clocked on, and I very recently learned that it's not just me, and a lot of other people made the exact same mistake and can't read either. Presence of Mind now procs a 3-hit combo of AoE DPS spells. Of course you'll use them in single target almost certainly as well, adding a little more meat to White Mage's DPS kit. There seems to be some kind of Medica 2 upgrade or animation change here. Know that it's right after a Thin Air, and there could or could not be some kind of correlation to that. There's also a new Gap Closer and a new AoE mitigation ability. Honestly, the Gap Closer alone is enough to make me excited. It may be locked to Temperance, but I kind of doubt it. I can't wait. A lot of Monk players are currently dooming and glooming, but I'm gonna be real, I think they're overreacting. Monk received this new gauge. When you use Dragon Kick, Twin Snakes or Demolish, you will gain 1, 2 and 3 stacks respectively on this gauge. Then you use Bootshine, True Strike and Snap Punch to spend the gauge. This means a few things. Firstly, the buffs in the dot provided by Twin Snakes and Demolish respectively have been applied and baked into this system instead. And 2, that Monk's constantly shifting 1, 2, 3 combo is maintained for the most part. There are upgrades to those 3 GCDs for when they're buffed as well. I'm okay with that. Instead of juggling buffs, you're balancing the gauge. During Brotherhood, you can now store up to 10 stacks of chakra instead of 5, helping to combat both the overcap and double weaving issues simultaneously, which in my opinion is an absolutely fantastic change. Honestly, I kind of wish it didn't require Brotherhood and you could just have 10 stacks whenever, personally. Riddle of Fire, Wind, and Earth now have follow-up attacks which seem to be GCD AoE attacks. And lastly, Six-Sided Star now eats your chakra stacks, presumably gaining potency based on the number of stacks it ate. I'm genuinely really happy about Monk. I feel like they've kept the core of what made the job so fantastic and fun in Endwalker, and changed it just enough in Dawntrail to make me excited to try what's to come. This is a job change done right as far as I'm concerned. Dark Knight was one of the great losers this job action trailer in my opinion. Plunge looks like it's gone, replaced by this new gap closer which of note does not deal damage. Delirium grants you this 3-hit combo instead of the blood spill as it used to by the looks of things. And it's been confirmed that Blood Weapon and Delirium are both being consolidated into one button. This does indeed mean that now only 3 hits will provide the blood gauge rather than 5. Shadow Wall gets an upgrade and Living Shadow now doesn't require any gauge to summon. Once you have your Living Shadow active, you now get a new GCD attack which can be used within it, which your Shadow will also replicate. Basically, gameplay wise, Dark Knight didn't change at all, aside from losing a few things it already had. I don't mind reducing the number of buttons pushed, because Dark Knight was quite a busy job, which definitely happened in a noticeable way here, but lacking the addition of any meaningful job mechanics to replace that is a little disappointing to me, especially when we consider that we've lost one of the coolest animations in Plunge. They finally did it. Bard songs have been changed to no longer require a target anymore. On top of this, Pitch Perfect is now an AoE, Bloodletter got an upgrade, and both Radiant Finale and Barrage have extra combo actions coming off of them, which is a change we've seen a lot in the Dawntrail job updates. I wonder if this is to further incentivize casual players to press their raid buffs regularly or something like that. I think that would make sense. Straight Shot and the Shadow Bite proc have now been merged as well. Basically, every important quality of life fix that Bard needed, which impeded the enjoyment for a lot of players, myself included, has been implemented, and otherwise the job stayed fairly similar but gained some extra off-global hits. Summoner got Solar Bahamut, a brand new summon. There's a twist though. Instead of it being a cycle of 3, what instead will happen is you summon Solar Bahamut, then Solar Bahamut, then Phoenix, and the cycle will repeat from there. Basically, Solar Bahamut will happen on every even minute window, and the other 2 will alternate on the odd minute windows. There's a new proc up of Searing Light, some upgrades get skills, and that's it. Endwalker Summoner was okay, it was a decent enough comfy job, and the perfect springboard to expand upon in future expansions, so why didn't they do that? Why is the simplest job in FF14 functionally identical for what will end up being 5 years straight? Instead of a new 1-minute summon, what we really needed was an additional gemstone primal, or a single meaningful extra job mechanic, or added weight to the summoning order itself and some decision making there. I'm actually really disappointed with what we ended up getting, because it could have been almost anything else and I would have thought it an improvement. Samurai didn't receive huge sweeping changes either. Tenka Gokun is receiving an upgrade, and seemingly Third Eye is as well. The Third Eye proc actually dissipates again a little later in the showcase, so we know it provides some persistent effect for a little while after you proc it. This new attack here costs 50 gauge, and based on how powerful it looks, we can probably assume it's either a 60 or 120 second cooldown, though that is definitely a prediction on my part. Shohar has been upgraded, and because this looks AoE, I hope to God they've combined Shohar 1 and 2, because that was a truly pointless additional button. This incredible attack here is actually just a Madare upgrade. Nothing is functionally different. They addressed one of my issues with Samurai though, which is that after the removal of Chiton, there was no meaningful decision making whatsoever in regards to gauge spend. But the gauge spender that they did add is almost certainly a cooldown, which doesn't really add much, but at least it's something, right? The main reason I'm not so harsh on Samurai compared to how I was on Summoner though, is that I feel that Samurai in its current state is a much more interesting job at baseline than Summoner was, so I'm willing to give it more of a pass. We'll see what happens, I guess. The Scholar trailer excited me, just because of how visually different everything is. Firstly, recitation is getting a lowered cooldown, and once again I anticipate that this will shift from 90 to 60 seconds, much like Sage's Soteria. Chain Stratagem receives a combo action after using it, which is an AoE dot. It's no miasma too, but I definitely appreciate the unintentional head nod. Then we get Seraphism, a cooldown that transforms the Scholar with fairy wings and a heavenly outfit, the polar opposite of Reaper's transformation. This effect buffs heals, though we don't actually know the specifics of how it does so at all. The fairy does not get eaten here, so it is not a dissipation upgrade, though feasibly it could be a complete replacement. During Seraphism, the Scholar uses a single target and an AoE curative effect with entirely new animations, so we'll have to wait and see exactly what those do. Sucker also received a new animation, so it could either get an upgrade or it could be based on a proc or a different ability like I mentioned a little bit earlier. You can see that they use emergency tactics right before the Sucker, so it definitely follows the same vein as the other ones. I'm just really excited for the Scholar changes. Healers came out of this live letter so well. There's things to be eager for on each of them. The Gunbreaker is the last of the pre-existing jobs on the trailer, and it got a couple of changes. Firstly, its gap closer has changed in much the same way that Dark Knight's did, taking away damage from it entirely, but likely adding the ability to zoom to allies as well as enemies. They received an upgrade to Nebula, a continuation attack off their fated circle, and a new combo called Lionheart, which becomes available after you use Bloodfest. So these changes feel a little minute, but Gunbreaker is so reliant on their gauge build and spending that Bloodfest providing that additional 3-hit combo that you will want to get in burst, as well as 3 stacks of gauge, means that you'll be spending a little more outside of No Mercy windows, which is fun, and you'll have slightly more weave and movement space during some No Mercy windows thanks to Lionheart. Honestly, solid, simple additions all round. I know people have been spending hours poring over the 2 new jobs, but honestly, that's not something I'm too interested in doing personally. I watched the showcases that Yoshi P put on, I understood the basics, and I think they both look like fantastic fun. I wasn't very interested in them before the live letter, but now I'm very, very excited to get to try them out myself as soon as possible. They look good, they look interesting, and I'm looking forward to learning the nuance of them myself once they're in my hands. Viper's Burst seems very reminiscent of Reaper's Enshroud, but that's where the comparisons end. Outside of that, it has numerous gauges and resources to manage, different GCD speeds, and constant off-global procs to wrestle with, and it seems like it'll be a super fast-paced job that'll be a joy to play. I was also shocked by the fact that Pictomancer had a lot more to it than I initially suspected. Both Umbral and Astral aspected stacks to build, their gauge, their multi-layered easel are all being juggled at once, and the job has a surprising number of full casts instead of being mostly focused on instants like, say, Summon. Also, this group buff that places a Verdant Meadow on the floor has a ton of potential, and I'm endlessly curious to see what the group-wide effects are, and if those players need to actually stay within it for its duration. This is especially interesting when you consider the fact that just a few patches ago, they buffed the radius of almost every raid buff in the game. So I wonder if you don't need to stand in this, or if you do, it must be really strong to accommodate that. Regardless of all of this, I'm excited for the future. The Dawntrail Media Tour is ongoing right now, which means that in a few short weeks we will likely be seeing tooltips and showcases of exactly how the jobs play in detail, and I can't wait for it. There's a few jobs that I think didn't come out of this with particularly good additions, and Summoner is the prime example of that, but as a whole, I'm pretty satisfied. As a healer main, we ate good as well. A lot of jobs did. I just can't wait to delve deeper, to see more, and to get to try them out in the new content. Thank you as always for watching, and make sure you have a fantastic rest of your day.